I don't know if that worked. It's kind of the opening scroll to my video here. I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, we're going to be reviewing Star Wars Vector Prime, Book 1 in the New Jedi Order by A Salvatore. I read all these books as they were being published. Vaguely remember them. I'll be honest, I skimmed through most of the series. Here it is. How many books are in the New Jedi Order series? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 books in the New Jedi Order series. One of the reasons I did not get into these as much as I should have, I should have paid more attention to these when I originally bought them and read them. But I didn't like the covers. You know, they used to do the old, all of the previous Star Wars Legends books had the awesome Drew Struzan cover art. And then for the New Jedi Order, they switched gears and they went to this weird Photoshop stuff, which I initially did not care for. And it's kind of, these weird Photoshopped covers are kind of sprinkled throughout the series, along with some other artist work. And I just didn't like them, and so I was just kind of like disappointed in the whole thing from the get-go. Bought the series, kind of skimmed through them. It was a mistake, because I just reread this, thinking, I want to reread this series and give it another go, because I didn't give it a fair shot the first time around. And the Star Wars Legends novels, they're kind of like my guilty pleasure novels. They're sort of like my hidden secret. Like, you know, I love them. I love them. But the New Jedi Order just sort of flew by me a little bit. Basically because I was a cover snob and I didn't like the covers. But now that I re-look at this and now that I've just reread this, I actually do appreciate the cover for the sort of creepy horror novel feel that it has. Because this is not only is this a great space opera, but this is a magnificent horror novel set in space. I really dug it on my reread. I was like so pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed this the second time around. And you know, once in a while that happens. You read stuff, you don't really care for it. Then you go back to it and you're like, oh, what was I missing? So anyway, I wrote some notes down. I don't normally write notes down for these reviews, but there were some things I wanted to talk about here. Not just the cover, but let's talk about A Salvatore and his writing of this book. You know, I do a lot of Comic-Cons and I sit at Bard's Tower, which is the bookstore where all the authors hang out on the showroom floor. And I've hung out with A Salvatore and watched him sign books, and I've talked to him a little bit. And he said that, you know, this book, and we'll get into this there will be some spoilers at the very, very end of my review. So if you don't want spoilers on this book particularly, we're probably going to do spoilers on all these books because it's going to be hard to talk about a 19-book series without doing spoilers at some point. So towards the very end of each one of these reviews, I will give a spoiler warning. So there's a spoiler coming up at the end, but something happens in this book. He did something in this book that no other Star Wars writer up to the point had done, which was kill off a main character. Spoiler alert, I won't tell you which one until the end of the review. Kill off a main character in the Star Wars universe, and he said, man, I was getting death threats. Like, people hated me. People were burning my books. I was getting death threats because I was the author that, you know. So these books, the New Jedi Order, if you're not familiar with the Star Wars Legends and everything like that, it's set 21 years after Return of the Jedi. So all of our main heroes, Luke, Leia, Han, Lando, everybody's 20 years older. They've got kids now. They're raising their kids. And this is where this is the horror element. I gotta tell you people, this is a little bit of a writing advice. All of my videos have some writing advice in them, and this is one that I'm gonna give you people that want to be writers. If you want to see how an author can set up a villain, not just a villain, but an entire race of villains, an alien race of villains, study the opening chapters of Vector Prime, because A Salvatore sets up an alien race of villains, and just the way he writes that chapter where he introduces this character is magnificent. And I took some notes on this. You know, the character, the villain's name, so in all the other Star Wars, it's always kind of like the Empire and Death Stars and this, that, and the other. Well, now Vector Prime, we've got different types of villains. We've got super alien creatures. I mean, there's a lot of aliens in the Star Wars universe, but these alien creatures are coming from a different galaxy. And there's a portal out of the far outer rim of the galaxy. There's a portal, and it's called the Vector Prime. And it teleports these aliens from another galaxy into our Star Wars galaxy. And these aliens are creepy. They're kind of like, they can make themselves look human, kind of like in Battlestar Galactica, you know, where the Cylons could look human, or in Terminator 2, where the silver Terminator guy could look human. Well, that's the way these aliens are, so they're really good at infiltrating themselves into our Star Wars universe, and we don't know which characters are these evil creatures. And they are called and I wrote this down because I don't know how to pronounce it. I just been pronounced it. They are called the Yushin Vong. The Yushin Vong. I think that's it. The Yushin Vong. The bad guys are called the Yushin Vong. And they're these really creepy looking, it's hard to describe what they are, because there's a scene in the chapter that I'm telling you about that you need, if you're a writer and you want to see how to creep your audience out. Just the scene where the I think his name is Nam Amor. He's the first evil alien guy that we meet that's sort of infiltrated. I mean, they're stoning. It's interesting because these aliens, they don't like technology and stuff. And so they're stoning. They throw all these droids into a pit and they stone them like mid-age stoning. And then there's a point where you're already creeped out by the guy anyway, but then there's a point where he decides to take off his human suit. And it's really weird because I've got experience with this, and I'll tell you about it, where he just sort of peels his skin off and reveals himself as this alien underneath, and it's just written so horror-like. I mean, this is like a horror novel, right? And one of the things that I kind of creeped me out about it is because, if you know, I work in the Utah State Prison. And I will share just a little story about you, because I've seen this happen, where an inmate that was not doing very well mentally had smashed his head into the walls over and over, the cement walls, creating a split in his head, and he started to peel his skin off, and I watched that, and I was horrified by that. Now, so I kind of have that image in my head as I'm reading this scene in this Vector Prime novel, and I'm just like, I understand that. I understand what that looks like. And that ain't good. That ain't good. It's not good. It's not good. So I was really sort of overly traumatized. Started having flashbacks. You know, and I love these aliens. This is the thing that I like about this series, rereading it and starting it over again, is the villain is so awesome. The villains, the alien creatures, the Yushin Bong, are just so awesome. I mean, they worship these idols that they make. They make these sculptures. There's this called the Slayer God, the God of War. It's called the statue of the Slayer, the God of War. They kiss it and they worship it. They do all other sorts of things with it. And that's our opening of Vector Prime. It's a setup novel where we get to see Luke and Leia and Han and Lando do, and C-3PO and Chewbacca and all those people doing, and their kids, Jayana and Jason, and and all of their little offspring, and they're doing their thing, and Mara Jade, and they're on the Jade Saber, the new, it's like kind of like the new Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon is still there, but they've got this other spaceship called the Jade Saber, and they fly that around. They do a lot of it, and then these Yushin Vong are slowly infiltrating themselves in. Slowly, these shape changers are slowly infiltrating into our Star Wars universe, and it's just flat out creepy like a horror novel. And that's the setup in book 1, and we got 19 others to go. And I remember kind of reading them, but not really reading them that closely 20 years ago when they came out. But I'm going to reread them closer this time so I could review each one of them for my channel. And we're going to get into the depths of this story because it's one of the more darker in tone Star Wars stories. That's the one thing I do remember about it. It is dark. It is not fluffy and fun. It is probably the darkest story in the Star Wars universe. And that's where we get to the spoiler. The part, so if you don't want to hear who dies at the end, turn off. The spoiler is where A Salvatore was asked by Lucasfilm to kill off Chewbacca. And he did. At the end of the novel, he did. And granted, he could have... Chewbacca sort of dies in one of those Boba Fett sort of ways where kind of anticlimactic. That's probably the only flaw that I saw with the book. I wish it would have been a little more dramatic, a little bit more, you know. But I do remember in the later books, Chewbacca's death, and that's why we've got to mention this spoiler, because his death... In the rest of these books, we're going to have to talk about it because it's a theme. Death of Chewbacca is a theme that follows us through the rest of this story, along with just the absolute Stephen King-like horror creatures that have infiltrated the Star Wars universe, and they just get bloody awful. And it's a dark, dark series. It's a dark, dark series. But if you read the forums, probably the most popular part of the Star Wars Legends, which is kind of why I decided to reread them, because everybody said that they were the most awesome part of the Star Wars Legends, and I remember going, I read them, and I was just going, eh. I love the Star Wars Legends, but the new Jedi Order, I was just going, eh. But Vector Prime, man, it set me up. Now I'm excited to get back into it. That's how cool this book was. I liked it. I give this an 8.5 out of 10, and I can't wait to get to the others.